Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. I oftentimes tell people that they need to do at least 2 exercises per muscle group if their goal is to maximize hypertrophy. And when I say that, I'm usually talking about outside of the novice phase. If you're in your first few months in the gym, you can probably get away with doing literally 4 or 5 total exercises for your whole body and gain muscle just fine. We're talking about people who are trying to maximize muscle growth who have reached a point where it's actually more difficult to do so, right, when you're done with some of those new gains. So in this video, you'll see me doing 4 exercises, all big compound movements. And I'll tell people, look, it's fine if one of those exercises is an isolation movement. That tends to work really well also. Tends to work just fine. So what you'll see me doing through this video, doing 2 chest exercises and then 2 back and bicep exercises. Now I want to note that my back exercises are bicep exercises also. Why? Because my back is extremely well developed relative to my arms. My arms tend to lag, just historically, genetically, structurally. They need extra work. All right, because again, look at my back there. So I make sure that I'm currently doing all of my lat exercises with a supine grip or an underhand grip to help with my biceps, and then I do curls afterwards on top of it. So again, in the case of a perfect example there, while we're on the topic, sometimes you have a muscle that needs even a third movement, right? If it's a particularly lagging muscle or particularly a lagging head of a muscle, you might need to add an isolation movement on top of these. Now, what I would say to a lot of people, and they're like, well, would a person ever benefit from like 5 or 6 exercises for a muscle? Probably not. And I know a lot of bodybuilders do that because they do everything in one day. But just biomechanically, there's actually probably no reason to ever do that. Right? There's no reason to do it. Usually by 3 exercises, if you haven't worked every single function and head and everything of a muscle by 3 exercises, you are just simply not training hard. That's it. You are simply not training hard if you haven't completely reached every single muscle fiber by that point through that muscle. So what am I doing here? You're seeing me do flat bench. Notice it's all with a wide grip and flat back. This is the benching you see me doing here. This is how I bench when I want to build my pecs. This is not how I bench if I'm chasing the biggest 1 rep max possible for a powerlifting meet. Right now, I'm focused on size, right? So notice it's higher reps. But on this bench, it's a very wide grip because it works the chest more, right? We work more lateral tricep and a little less pec as the grip comes in. So this gives us the deepest stretch possible on the pecs. Of course, I'm flat back and everything. So again, look how I'm benching here. If you have someone who says, oh, I don't get a deep burn in my chest from benching, benching doesn't build my chest, they're not benching the way I'm benching in that video, period. I promise you they're not. So a nice wide grip, that is a general chest builder, okay? The flat bench done in that manner will build your entire chest pretty effectively. And people say, well, doesn't it bias to lower? No, it actually is fairly even. The data shows that it gives a pretty even distribution. And it does work the upper chest pretty effectively. And then, of course, after I flat bench, though, my second exercise for chest is incline, which does bias. It biases towards upper chest and front delts a little bit. But I think that I personally need that. And I do feel like it's not that lower chest, having a big lower chest isn't good for aesthetics. It's that if your upper chest tends to lag and isn't as fully developed, it can create some imbalances. And I'm trying to look better, even though my background's powerlifting. I am now actually trying to work on building a better physique. So things like the incline are very useful for that. But this allows for more complete development. Keeping in mind, the incline still works the lower chest too. But because we've worked 2 different angles, 2 considerably different angles, we've worked a wider variety of muscle fibers. We've exhausted and recruited a wider variety of muscle fibers through the chest, because look how big that muscle is, and look at all those different points of insertion all along the sternum, right? It only inserts at the armpit on the other side, but in the center it inserts there. So a couple different angles are really, really valuable. Okay. Now, of course, keeping in mind, I'm not calling it chest and triceps because completely different work with the triceps going on. The long head, the biggest head of the tricep, does get neglected on pressing a little. So that's a separate topic. But this is chest. This will give good balanced maximal chest development over time, which is something I'm working on improving. Arms being a priority. Then we look at the back work I'm doing. What do you see me doing? You're seeing me do a weighted chin up. Okay, so usually I superset these. So this is kind of the exercise order in my workouts at the time too, because these 4 clips came from the same workout. I usually superset benching with chin-ups or pull-ups, and then I go over to incline and then rows in a superset. So I do 3 sets of bench and 3 sets of pull-ups back to back, right? And then I go over and then superset the same thing for chest and back again. So the other thing you'll see me doing, of course, I do the chin-ups, weighted chins. Again, lat is primary here, but it does work the entire back. Keeping in mind the back is a complex set of muscles, right? Complex set of muscles. So you have a lot of muscles involved. We have lats, we have posterior deltoids, we have traps, and the traps are even worked at different angles. There's the upper, lower, medial, and middle trap, sorry. We have rhomboids, we have teres minor, all this stuff all through there. Then you have the bigger muscles, rotator cuff muscles like the infraspinatus, which is actually pretty big. One of your 4 rotator cuffs, it almost counts as its own back muscle. All right, you have all these different muscles going on back there, plus erectors running up the back. With pull-ups, we are biasing a little bit towards the lat, right? A little bit more lat dominant, whereas in the row, still works lats, but it's a little more posterior delt and trap dominant, particularly a little more upper trap, right? So whereas in pull-ups and chin-ups work more towards the middle, the row works more towards the upper, just like with the incline versus the flat bench. But keeping in mind, do rows still work lats very effectively? Of course they do. Do pull-ups and chin-ups potentially work posterior delts and traps effectively? Of course they do. I would argue chins work those a little bit less than pull-ups. But when we've got a row, it doesn't matter. So the end result, everything's getting work from a couple different angles. All right. These 4 exercises together should give us pretty complete chest and back development. Right? We shouldn't need anything else unless one of them is a particularly lagging muscle group for you. In which case you might need a 3rd exercise potentially, just like I need arm exercises after this. So this is a perfect example of what I mean of doing 2 exercises for each muscle group. Notice I'm counting the whole middle and upper back as a group. I don't count the row as a lower back exercise because my low back is so strong that rows don't work it anymore. Keeping in mind, I deadlift well over 600 pounds. You guys see me doing reverse hypers with 400 pounds. The row is just simply not enough to fatigue my low back anymore. So I don't count it towards that. So the lower back, of course, gets worked on my lower body days. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.